Hi, and welcome to Document and Exploitation. Document exploitation, or Docx, is not exactly a technology side of the house. It's actually more of a paper-driven side of the house. When we start talking about document and media, or excuse me, document exploitation, or the Docx, what we're looking at is the paper documents and things that we find in our environment. Basically, as the definition goes, it's a set of procedures put together by DoD that allows us to discover vast amounts of information in different formats and different languages. Uh, when it says here, when documents are suspected to contain information of potential intelligence, value rapid and accurate interpretation of the information, identifies targets, bolsters success, and supportive operations. Okay, this is your actionable intelligence. So what Docx is basically you taking pieces of paper, things that you find in the environment that you're investigating, and then you're applying some metric to it, maybe a watch list, or maybe sending it back to one of the national centers to allow them to put it through their filters and their search engines looking for specific syntactical information. So when you're talking about Docx, Docx again is one of the domains of exploitation, and it can be very key in providing certain bits of information that you might not find in your electronic media. You may not find it in your biometrics or your biomedical. Someone writes a note down, for example, or someone scribbles something on a piece of paper, and that scribbling goes through to the second page. They rip it off, and you have a partial photocopy or a photocopy of what they wrote on the page right below it. Or you find pieces of paper in people's pockets where people have written random notes. Notebooks are very common for people to carry. A lot of times they encrypt them with their own coding system, but they still become very useful to us, especially if we are able to identify the language, the code that they are using. So documents and document ingestion to the electronic systems is very important. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to be able to take that document or take that piece of media and be able to get it off of our target and send it back to somewhere where they can do the interpretation. That's usually done in an electronic form. So you're going to do some type of scanning, or you'll do something where it causes the document to be imaged enhanced so that the readable text or the information can be transferred into some type of readable language. They have a lot of scanners that have that capability. They'll read common language and then convert that over into a digital form. Many cell phones today come with a translation type program. You take a Google Translate, for example. If you hold it over a menu and you hit translate and you tell it what language you want to translate from to English, it will do a relatively good job most times of identifying that text and then transferring it into something that is English readable, which is very useful for us. So what's a document? Well, basically a document is anything that can record information. Um, Old computer media files, electronic evidence, things such as that. In fact, in the very beginning of computer crimes, when I was coming up through the ranks of the military police school, documents used to be the floppy disks and things such as that because there wasn't a domain of cellular exploitation, a domain of media or um, hard drive investigations at the time. Document exploitation that was considered to be anything that could hold words or some type of information, and that included our electronic media. Today, Docx doesn't include that. They've broken out DOMX or digital media away from the Docx, and they've also broken out Cellx from the cell phone exploitation. So we've seen it merge as the growth of those two domains became a much more apparent that they were going to be their own thing. We started creating its own channel, its own protocols, and its own SOPs for collection, as we didn't want to collect them the same way as we collected just straight documents. But things like books and magazines can be very important. People, well, why does a book or a magazine, how does that help you out? Well, it may tell you where the person came from. It might tell you an airline. If someone takes the magazine off the airline, for example, I took a Safi Airways magazine off the airline. If you found that in my briefcase, and I'm now in New York, you may have an understanding that I came from Afghanistan, and I rode Safi Airlines over to Dubai, and then caught a flight out of Dubai. It may give you some understanding of where I came from. Pamphlets, maps, things such as that. Government or military IDs, government or military orders may help you understand where I came from. A lot of time people journal, and they journal in their books. They may have a book they like a lot, and as they go through and find something of interest, they journal next to it and put some personal history next to a paragraph or something that they've read on the page they're looking at. And this can be very useful to you, especially if someone's not really thinking that what they're doing is creating a document of record. Pictures can be very useful to you. I'm sure you've all heard the story where someone takes a picture in front of a military fence line, and the pictures of their parents, but in the background it shows the security cameras, or it shows a tower placement, or it shows some type of fortification, defensive measure that we probably don't want to have published yet. They don't realize that because they took a picture of their family and they posted that up onto a social media site, which then allowed a foreign adversary to see how our facilities might be protected. Something simple as that. So people make those mistakes. You may have pictures that are identifiable to a location. So a picture of, again, the family at the local bazaar, or something that is recognizable to someone from theater might be very useful in identifying who or what organization, what village, what tribe that person may be from. So a document, again, is anything that holds information. It can be a picture, it can be a map, it can be letters, basically anything that has information on it, down to the scribblings on the back of cigarette packs, things such as that. Impromptu places where people write a number down because they need to remember a number, and they forget that they have that and it's in their pocket. All this information can then be generated into some form of intelligence. Once they take all this information out and they start placing it together, they can start identifying where things go. And one of the databases that was used, or some of the databases used, are things such as Harmony and Bices and things like that, which then correlate all this data together. So, for example, in this picture here, we have note cards that have some phone numbers on it. We have some Pashto language. We have a fingerprint that was taken off a cap, and we have a prescription for a certain type of medicine. Well, all of these things put together may tell us a lot. Individually, there may not be too much of a correlation, but if you put all of this information, now what we're going to create is this circumstantial awareness of all the items that we've collected from a scene. So now we might be able to put together a cleaner picture or a clearer picture. You add that to all the other things that have been collected from the scenes in the past. Well, now you may be able to build an even better picture of what's going on. And they call that the totality of circumstance. the building of all these little objects into a singular picture or into a singular item. So when we start talking about Docx, we start talking about how we can use information amongst the domains of intelligence gathering or evidence gathering or artifact collection. And this is what we're talking about. For example, the phone numbers up at the very top here by themselves may mean absolutely, or these numbers right here might mean absolutely nothing. But when we add that to the cell phone that we collected and we find out that this phone number right here and the contact record on the cell phone are a match, we might be able to associate that piece of paper who is in a pocket of a different person and that person to the cell phone that someone else is holding. We also might be able to say that this individual, since he has the handwritten number of somebody, it may be closer to that person than if they had a torn out magazine article with a phone number on it, for example. So there's also a little bit more of personalization when you have these handwritten notes and things such as this. Now, knowing the type of language obviously helps us out. Adding that to the biometrics that you're collecting. So these fingerprints plus the language plus the type of number may lead you to a specific region. So now we're adding all these things together, and we are possibly building, you know, some type of regional locate or regional placing for these individuals. And this can be very useful and very important. So it's the building of all the Docx, biometric, building all of those domains together like puzzle pieces. They create this thing called the totality of circumstance, and that's totality of circumstance is something that we use then as a method to go out and do follow-on missions, identify people of interest, identify your high-value targets, things such as that. So Docx can be very useful to us. The next thing Docx can do is going to help us in our overall structure. So when we start looking at the overall structure of how things work, that document may well lead us to a point within an organization and tell us a lot about how that organization is developed out. So if you have a lot of people with that same number, we might have a highlighted node that says this is an important number within this organization because all the people in it that we've rolled up have had that one number in their pocket. So that might become an important number. Or we might be able to build an organizational chart based off of slips of paper or things that are written down amongst people, so that we can see the basically the overall hierarchy of an organization. This is all important, especially when you are looking at, again, the totality of circumstance, or those things that will help us identify the actionable intelligence, actionable items, or follow-on targets in the future. So again, Docx is one of the domains. Docx is one of the pieces of the puzzle that we're going to use to put it all together. Now, how do we capture this and how do we put it all together? As I mentioned before, we have databases that allow us to ingest all of this information into a container, and then that container can be searched. So when we're looking at these separate pieces of paper, separate cell phones, separate biometrics, when you look at them separately, you may never have a correlation between the two or between any of them. But if you have a database or you have some type of structure that you can throw them into, well, now you have some methodology or some metric. And one of those databases is a program called Harmony. And Harmony was developed to really focus on building out the cells of Al-Qaeda. We were actually fortunate enough to be a part of the Harmony program out at Fort Huachuca when it was first being designed. Chris Ketterman, one of our engineers, was part of the team that built the filters to ingest information from the media exploitation and cellular exploitation into the system. So it's databases such as this. And then you have other databases like BICES, the SOCOM portal, and other entities that allow you to put abstract information in it and pull out something that means something. So again, it's a unique way of using our technology to aid us. We're using artificial intelligence now with our Docx, and we're using all of this to help us, win the war against our enemies. It's yet another combat multiplier for us, being able to ingest and bring all this stuff together. So document exploitation, again, it's not a technology. It's a very human-related set of taskings. We have, again, the pictures, maps, shorthand notes, things such as that allow us to gather information and ingest them and add them to all of our technology finds, such as our cell phones and our media and things such as that. So Docx is an extremely important piece or component to the domains, and it's something that during the class you'll get an opportunity to see how it kind of fits in when we do our Python exercises in the intermediate and in the advanced classes. All right. Well, this kind of concludes the overview of Docx. Docx is a very interesting field. It's definitely something, if you are a nodal person, if you're someone that likes to draw lines from A to B, Docx can be very interesting for you because it allows you to create organizational structure and things out of abstract kind of pieces of paper and gum wrappers and things that are found around the investigation scene. So with that, this concludes this module, and I look forward to seeing you in another module.